Today we're going to talk about a lot of things, especially around blockchain, because we're in the fourth industrial revolution, but it's going to be more about how traditional developers sometimes fail in terms of learning blockchain. And it could be for various reasons, but I want to break down some of that as well as what I see in terms of the future of blockchain and where we are. So I'm going to break that down. My name is Arnold. I've been in technology for over 30 years, started out in mainframes, and then from mainframe went to client server, and then ultimately a computer network architect, right? And then I worked in Silicon Valley for 7.5 years at an incredible company. Loved that. Then I got my blockchain education, became a certified blockchain architect, and mainly certified blockchain architect means I build applications for the blockchain. Then I'm also certified smart contract auditor. And then I build with my companies and we build solutions. And we're pretty much in a position, especially now, what I call the fourth industrial revolution, which is artificial intelligence, right? Web3 and blockchain together now. And I'll talk about that and why that's important, especially now at the beginning of 2026, right? So there's a lot of things going on in the world, right? We know in terms of interest rates could be coming down. We know that there is an election cycle this year. So a lot of things are in play when you talk about blockchain, right? Because blockchain has to do with finance, because you have digital assets, but then you also have real world assets, right? I'm going to talk a little bit about that. And that can be something like real estate. That's a real world asset. Okay, we have things moving on chain in terms of stocks. Your bonds are moving on chain. Fidelity, as of today, right? They're going to launch a stable coin. So these developments are happening every single day in the blockchain space, but many people don't know, right? So if you're a regular developer and you're looking at the market, and I understand, right? Right now it's late January. You're looking at, your position. What options do you have, right? There could be layoffs that are coming. So a lot of things you might be thinking about in your mind that, I've experienced, because I experienced, like I said, I've been in technology for 30 plus years, right? Started back in mainframe. You guys remember the days of mainframe, right? Even back in the day when they had the dial-up modems. You guys remember the dial-up modems, right? Remember those little things in the back of the modem? And you get that sound, and then your modem would connect, right? That was back in the day of those gigantic phones. Remember those big phones, the brick phones? We had that. We had things like the Motorola pager, right? We had that going on. So 30 years of technology, we've come a long way. That was the third industrial revolution, which is what I call computers and the internet. Now we're in the fourth industrial revolution, like I said at the beginning, right? So in terms of blockchain, if you're a developer, right, you've studied developing, you understand C++ or you JavaScript or whatever coding language that you understand, right? And you're looking at blockchain, you're going like, can I learn this, right? Of course you can. You're already there. So Ethereum, which is the layer of blockchains that institutions are adopting, make no mistake about that, institutions are adopting Ethereum. All right. On Ethereum, you learn the coding language of Solidity. All right. It's kind of like C++, but it's specific. It's Solidity. Okay. So that's what you're learning. And you want to build on Ethereum because Ethereum, which is EVM compatible, there are multiple EVM compatible blockchains. And all that means is once you know how to code in Solidity, it can translate to all the different blockchains. And I'm telling you, once you do your research on those 50 or so blockchains that are EVM compatible, you will see that Ethereum is what you want to build on, 100%, right? And you can always, get another skill set later, but you want to build on Ethereum. It's like Windows and Mac, guys. Okay. Remember, I told you the third industrial revolution, right? When I got involved in networking, I started on, once I came from mainframe, I got into networking, but it was Novell. Back then, Novell was the thing to do. That was before Windows networking, right? And then when we went to cloud computing, before we went to cloud computing, most everybody had their systems in-house, right? Their own data centers where they had the information, right? I remember talking to clients back in the day, telling them that we need to go to cloud, and they were like, well, I'll never go to cloud, because they didn't understand. They thought they would, something would happen to their data. Well, we know now, if you're not on AWS, which is Amazon, and if you're not on Microsoft Azure or Google GCP in the cloud, then what are we talking about? What are we doing, right? It's the same thing with blockchain. There is going to be many use cases. Again, I'm speaking to those developers who need to learn a new skill set and switch it up, because we're in the fourth industrial revolution. You got to change that skill set. Like I said, when I started working in mainframe, every time the technology moved, I had to move and I had to go to school for it, right? And so once you start to do your research on the Ethereum blockchain and on the fact that Fidelity, JP Morgan Chase, BNY Mellon Bank, which controls $57.8 trillion in assets, are moving to the blockchain, when you see that major institutions now, because of the Genius Act in the United States, right, it made it possible for people to do stablecoins. And so now the Clarity Act is working its way through the government. So all those things to say is that you need to have a blockchain portfolio of applications that will show, number one, employers, and will show, if you do consulting work, will show consultants, or if you own your own company. All right. So me and my partners, so the applications and things that we build, right? So we build real world asset applications. Like I said, it could be for real estate, could be for the energy sector, right? Any of those things in the real world assets column, that's what we build. Okay. But in my community, I also teach developers like yourself through portfolios that the industries are going to need. Now, if you do your research, you will see that between now and 2030, it's only 3 years and 11 months from now. Between now and 2030 is something called the Great Wealth Transfer, and you can look that up. But what's happening, guys, on chain, right, because of assets that are going on chain, digital assets, and all the institutions are moving money on chain, it could be possibly close to or surpass anywhere in the 10 to 11 trillion dollar range. It's a possibility. Why? Because all that value is moving on chain. You can do the research. ARK Invest has an incredible PDF that they created called Big Ideas 2026, where her team does tremendous research in blockchain, artificial intelligence, and how these technologies will come together, right? And so if you know anything about blockchain and stablecoin and understand how artificial intelligence and blockchain will work together between the next 5 to 10 years, what you're doing is you're starting to really understand how to get your skill set in a place where you can make a difference, right? Because if you are a developer, you're swamped and you're probably learning all kind of other stuff, but you want a guided route, right? You want to be able to learn how to not only deploy smart contracts, but you want to build real world applications, right? That's what we do. That's what I do. That's what I help teach people do. I can't do it for you. You got to do it for yourself, right? So what I want you to take away from this is that you got to do it now. Now I'm going to break down, because when I teach blockchain and I teach how to build blockchain applications, we use a tech stack. We use a layered tech stack based on artificial intelligence, right? So we do our tech stack. And what I mean by tech stack, I mean the tools that we use to build out our front ends, right? And so once you build out your front ends, you do your testing on your front ends, then you connect it to the blockchain and you build your application. You do the testing on the blockchain, like everything that we need to do for testing on that. And then we make sure that we do smart contract audits, right, on the blockchain application. So we make sure those audits are correct, right? So you have to know the architecture, right? You have to know, is it a private blockchain, right? Or is it a public blockchain? Now, when you look at the data in ARK Invest, in that data that they put out, the biggest things that's going to happen this year, the next 4 or 5 years and beyond, is going to be digital wallets, smart contracts for sure, right? Smart contracts is what we build on Ethereum and on Base. Okay, that's smart contract, right? We build those for the Ethereum ecosystem. Okay, so keep smart contracts in your mind, in your brain, right? So having knowledge of smart contracts and having knowledge on blockchain architecture and having knowledge on how to look at vulnerabilities and look for them to prevent them is going to be key when you're talking about institutions, right? And when you're talking about, as the industry becomes more and more regulated, those skill sets are going to be needed. So if you think about back in the days when, you know, people were driving cars without insurance, right? They didn't have insurance, but eventually the industry was regulated and they had to have insurance. All right. Same thing in the industry that we're in terms of blockchain. So you have to look at smart contracts that we build on the blockchain at one point being regulated. So if you're a smart contract auditor, right, and they don't have enough of these individuals around the world. Guys, you know that Web3 is worldwide, right? So you understand that this is a worldwide skill set, right? So if this is a worldwide skill set and this is going on chain, when I say this, I mean real world assets are going on chain, right? Then you need to have people with the skill sets to make that happen, because you have to put eyes on that, right? So we teach, and our team, we build with our artificial intelligence tech stack, our AI tech stack, because we're in the fourth industrial revolution, and we build applications and products using the skill set and using artificial intelligence. And we use AI agents, right? So, and then you also got to think about marketing. You have to have a whole holistic understanding in the fourth industrial revolution of what your role is. If you're a developer in this space and you're trying to get that next level of skill set under your belt, right? Like I said, either to be a consultant or to build your own products or services or to have your own company, you have to be able to put that together, right? And that's what I teach. I start from fundamentals, then go to Solidity Advanced, right? And then we build out projects like real world projects. And then we make sure you get your portfolio. And then we have a lot of other things that are coming to help support you in building your portfolio, because you want to go from a developer, right? A regular developer, but you want to become a blockchain developer and a smart contract auditor. And you want to be having a situation where you have the portfolio, right? Portfolio to go with it. So you got to think about that. You start out and then you go and you get these skill sets to be ready. Now, you got to start now. When do I think you have to start? I think, in my opinion, you have to start very soon. You have to start immediately. The reason I say that is because if you look at where we are, okay, the SWIFT system in terms of messaging are starting to take place on the blockchain, right? We're just talking about messaging. And then you look at the major banks, the institutions that are now running blockchain applications And they're also, and this is happening every day, so you can look this information up. This information is out there every single day, right? And so what you want to do with that particular information, you want to build your skill sets to get ready, right? Because applications, guys, when I say applications, I mean decentralized applications. If you're a developer, you're familiar with building applications, right? Decentralized applications is just taking your skill set, instead of building applications, right? Like an applications for your application server, you're building applications for Web3, right? They sit, the database for the blockchain is sitting worldwide, all right? And you have blockchain nodes, which are around the world, and that database propagates out to the other database, so you can't take the network down. So you're building decentralized applications on top of these blockchains, right? Remember, guys, I've been in technology for 30 years. The information, like technology is still the same, but it goes to another level. Remember, I told you, started in mainframe, and then from mainframe with the client server, which is Windows, right? And remember, these are operating systems. Ethereum virtual machine, that's an operating system, guys. Remember, guys, virtual machines, right? You can put a Mac operating system on a Windows box through a virtual machine. It's no different. So you got to think of EVM compatible blockchains, and now you're building applications that go on the blockchain, but they can service worldwide. So anything that you build on that architecture, right, can be accessed worldwide. That's what you have to think. This is not building an application for the Apple iPhone store. This is building a worldwide application. That's why getting the skill set in blockchain and building on the blockchain is such a valuable skill. Don't let anyone ever tell you that the fourth industrial revolution is not here, that AI is not here, and that real world assets and digital assets are changing the financial system. Is anybody ever tell you those two things? I want you to run away from them as fast as possible, because they do not understand the history of technology, and they've never been in technology. Again, I've been in technology for 30 years, worked for one of the biggest Silicon Valley firms. Beautiful, love that company, right? And now I'm just transitioned over to the blockchain side. So what I want you to do, I do have it's free. It's a free blockchain guide, which is below, right? Hop in there. I'm going to let you know when I open back up my community, right? So I have a school community of individuals that are building blockchain applications, and they're getting their portfolios, right? The goal is to get their portfolios to align what the market wants, right? That is the goal. So get the free guide, right, by getting in there. And I'm going to announce probably in a week or two. I'm still thinking on the date of the next version of what we're offering inside that to help individuals get that portfolio much faster, right? A lot more clarity and a lot more depth. So if you are that developer, and if you understand that you need to continue your education in both artificial intelligence and blockchain, you want to go down below, get in that link, and subscribe to the channel. And then I'll see you guys in the next video.